So do you struggle with procrastination?
Not really, in the sense that, not really. There are things that I don't like doing, that I don't enjoy as much. And so if at the end of the day, if I've run out of time and there are a couple of things left on my calendar, I know I can do just one. The thing that I am not looking forward to is probably the one that will get bumped off. And so if that happens a few times, that will get bumped off more than others. And so you could think of that as procrastination. It doesn't end up hitting up against deadlines, and I don't end up missing things because I was procrastinating or things of that sort. And one thing that I've realized is that if there's something that I don't feel like doing, I'm aware that once I do it, I will be in a world where I don't need to do it anymore. And that I actually have found motivating, that I would like for example, taxes, right? I don't look forward to doing taxes at all. But I know once we do them, I will no longer have to do taxes. And so that ends up being an attraction that helps deal to some extent with the procrastination.
Do you struggle with procrastination?
I would say no, actually. Again, everyone tries to put certain things off, but I like staying on a schedule and getting things done.
Do you struggle with procrastination?
Sometimes. I think I tend to view procrastination as kind of like signs of burnout, maybe, in the sense of like, my natural state is that I'm generally pretty excited and motivated to do stuff, but I do find when I'm sort of like really pushing hard that kind of disappears a bit. And so there certainly are times when I'm like, oh gosh, I have to do this and I don't want to do this, and I really don't want to do this.
Do you struggle with procrastination?
Yeah, a lot. In fact, one of the things that I do whenever I have, let's say, tons of things that I need to do, within a week or so, is that I suddenly go on Amazon or whatever the internet website, and then just buy a textbook on a topic that is pretty remotely relevant to what I need to read, and then just start reading them, or at least pretending to read them, because I never actually get to finish any of those textbooks. So that's one of the ways in which I waste a lot of time. And then one weird thing I have is that it actually happens, especially when I need to do something by some deadline that is approaching, and the thing is more interesting. So when I need to actually really finish it off, something that is really uninteresting, I tend to actually focus more easily as the deadline approaches. But when it's the interesting stuff, I don't know why, but somehow my mind starts just wandering around, and then start thinking about, maybe I need to learn about the causal inference. And then that's the reason why I bought like 3 or 4 textbooks on the topic, that all of which I've only read about first 2 chapters.
Interesting. Yeah. But I guess it is a hallmark of an academic that we procrastinate by reading other academic textbooks.
That's a good point. I think that's actually one of the reasons why I love being a professor, is that I think that one of the items in our job description is to think about something that you don't have to think about. So I love that.
Do you struggle with procrastination?
No, not really. Actually, I'm kind of the opposite. I try to do everything as the task that's assigned to me as soon as I can, and then I get stressed out that I cannot do that quick. I cannot do those quickly, and that's unfortunately that's not a good thing, I guess. So I'm trying to reduce the stress a little bit.
Do you struggle with procrastination?
For certain tasks. There are some things that I don't know, prefer to do, and I'll do them right away. There's no big deal. And then there are other tasks that just day by day get moved. Oh, I can do that tomorrow. It's fine.
Just out of curiosity, what's the longest you've punted on a task?
Well, so far, I'm pretty good at getting things in by the deadline. So my procrastination extends up until basically having to do it last minute by the deadline. So whenever that deadline happens to be. But I'll be very ambitious. I'll do my planning, and I'll see that I have something that's going to be due in a few months, and I'll try to start putting it on my calendar or scheduling it in. But yeah, I'll just postpone it.
Hmm.
Do you struggle with procrastination?
I would say I would lean towards no for that. I don't, when I'm very excited about something, I will not procrastinate. When I do things that I don't really want to do, I will try to like, oh, maybe I'll take a little walk before I do this and stuff like that.
Like
so yeah, so
taxes.
Yes. Oh yeah. Correct. So when it comes to like doing these things, I would say I procrastinate. But when it comes to doing things I like, I don't feel the need to.
Do you struggle with procrastination?
Yeah, for sure. But honestly, who doesn't? Are there people who don't?
Yeah, they exist. They exist. I've met them.
Oh, I thought it was a myth. I see.
They're
Yeah.
not very representative, but they exist.
I see. Huh. No, I mean, I struggle with procrastination. I think I'm not as bad as some people. So my trick usually is to, find something that is even more pressing than the thing that I'm trying to procrastinate, right? And then procrastinate the other thing by doing the thing that you needed to do in the first place.
That's pretty efficient.
Yeah, it doesn't work, but yeah. But yeah, I'm a procrastinator.
Do you generally struggle with procrastination?
All the time. All the time, I think. Yeah, I think I've pretty much all my life, I guess. It's an interesting thing. Procrastination is an interesting thing. It's a question of what you count and what you don't count as your achievements during the day. And it took me a while. I mean, I always am kind of unhappy that I'm wasting my time. And, in fact, I keep this work diary, which I have done for like 30 years. And anything I've seen, even go back, I'll still say, yeah, I'm not done anything. And most of the time, it's because I think that I don't count the day-to-day things that we have to do as part of work. So to me, I think work, and especially all of us in academia, to me, the work is kind of sitting somewhere, thinking about something and getting an idea. That doesn't happen. And if it doesn't happen, if you don't spend that much time on that, I feel as if I did not use the day well. But then, all the other things that you have to do, read somebody's paper, give them comments, etc. Those are part of what I'm supposed to be doing, but somehow I don't count it in the back of my head. And so I feel as if I'm always sort of falling behind with respect to this thing that I guess I have in my head, that, this romanticized notion of sitting somewhere and, when getting ideas, which happens once in a while, but yes, it's like, it's a different thing. So yeah, yes, certainly I actually have G tasks. Google used to have this Google tasks to do, and I started putting those things, and it's ridiculous now. I mean, it's like maybe like 90 pages long, and I just basically keep putting stuff on the top. It's like hilarious. It says, once in a while, I just, try to scroll down. It takes me multiple minutes. And so in a way, I think the way this procrastination gets handled is sort of things that just go down. And, if it is important enough, somebody will get back.
Yeah, I think at this point, this is not a procrastination problem. It's a prioritization system.
Indeed. I mean, I think really, in a weird sense, I think all of us have to deal with it because everybody is 24/7 accessible. And so it becomes an issue of, if you do not carefully set time, if you're not careful about your time, you would just be doing everything that everybody wants you to do. And then there's, for good reasons, they have things that they would want you to do if you're a bunch of students, if you're in a department and so on. So my sense is that, yes, I procrastinate. And the important things, probably if it's important, they will bring up, somebody will bring them up again. But yeah, so
Okay.
I think pretty much, I mean, again, I think my wife, who's another faculty member, and I'm quite jealous of her. She's extremely good with her time and so on. But she is a lot more, I think with respect to somebody like her, I think I'm like essentially, I'm just not doing anything on time, but I get by. Essentially, yeah.
Do you struggle with procrastination?
Yeah, I think everyone does. I think during the semester, so I'm teaching 2 classes now, and during the semester, it's hard to find time to procrastinate. And I also have very specific tasks I have to do. I guess I procrastinate more when it's some sort of more creative activity, like writing a grant. It's probably the hardest when I really procrastinate. It's hard to focus on an idea for an extended period of time, and that's like, I suppose, when I procrastinate. And I wish I had more constructive ways to procrastinate. In fact, I've tried finding good ways to procrastinate. The best I came up with is just having a book rather than the web to look at when I want to procrastinate. But I guess I'm kind of disciplined, and when things need to be done, I tend to do them. But I find it easy to not procrastinate with things that are more structured, like preparing for class or working on a paper. I like having one thing to work on because I don't have to think about how to prioritize. If I have one thing to work on, unless it's a grant, I don't procrastinate as much.
Do you struggle with procrastination?
Yes. My God, yes. Yeah, that's that's a very serious problem for me. Yeah, like I said, I mean, this whole getting up early in the morning actually literally did come from the fact that if I worked on something, let's say I had a problem set due or something like, in my undergrad, right, then I would find that if I worked on it ahead of time, I would waste a ton of time and I would just be, puttering around. And so I kind of evolved into the setup where I would wake up, I would wake up with enough time to finish something, but it was like, it would be due at like 9 a.m. right? And I'm up at like maybe 4 or maybe 3. And that gives you a lot of clarity on what you're spending your next little while on, right? So yeah, so that's what, that helped actually deal with my procrastination. But then again, that is kind of the extreme form of procrastination in the sense that it doesn't get worse than that. So yeah.
I have to say, Aaron, I empathize so much with what you're saying.
Oh, that's good.
I relate so much to these sort of decisions. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, the funny thing is, like, so Joelle is very different from me, right? So she's like very much of a planner. So we're an interesting study in contrast this way. And so yeah.
So
how
do you come to terms then? What's the working agreement in the conflict between plans and spontaneity?
Oh, well, I think it's pretty much as you would imagine, right? In the sense that plans usually win out, right? Like, so when we think about what we're gonna do for the summer vacations, right? She'll have planned something I won't have, so we'll do the thing that she planned. It's kind of how it's gonna work, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. So I'm struggling with that right now because I want to go camping this summer, and so just finding time to even just sit down and coordinate that, like, it's not exactly my forte, that planning those kinds of things in advance. So yeah, so that's a current struggle.
Do you sometimes rely on her plans? That you can take certain risks because you know that there will be a plan.
Oh,
that
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think I rely not just on Joelle's plans, but I rely on the competence of the people around me generally a little too much for that, right? Like I kind of think things are going to work out, someone's going to warn me about something if there's something I've missed. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I do that to a fault.
Do you end up struggling with procrastination?
Constructive procrastination? Yeah. I'm always doing something constructive. Or like besides for TikTok. But for the most part, it's so for example, one thing that I'm doing right now is that so Emma and I are designing a new course for the fall. And like that is just this crazy fun new idea. And so that means that anytime I have a moment, it's like, well, what if I start, lesson planning? What if I start doing some of the prep for the projects for that, right? And it's like totally constructive, but it is also definitely not what needs to get done right now. And so that's mostly what happens is, or like and I'm happy about all the things I do. So like the other thing I guess a couple months ago now, I realized that my website didn't meet accessibility standards. And so there were a whole bunch of problems. Like I had put alt text on images, but I didn't realize, for example, that you should put a tag that indicates the language of a page so that screen readers and stuff like this can sort of function properly. There's like a whole bunch of this stuff. And so I spent like every evening for probably like a week just like redoing large chunks of my website to make it everything as compliant as I could. And it's like, I'm glad that I did. Like, I feel like that's like a good, positive thing. Also probably not if someone was like, what's the most important thing you could be doing this week with your extra time? It was like definitely not that. So that's more the kind of procrastination that I tend to do. It tends to be of this form where I decide that there's something else that is going to get upweighted that clearly doesn't need to be upweighted right now, but seems more fun than whatever there's a whole list of these things. So like I can just keep going on of these like sort of side projects that were like, I think are good, but they're not the priority.
Makes sense. Do you struggle with procrastination?
I do, yeah. Particularly in things like paper deadlines, I definitely find that I struggle personally, and I'm not great at having my students kind of have their drafts ready beforehand. So yeah, it's a problem. I think I'm probably like a productive procrastinator, or I lie to myself about that I like become very good at other things besides what I'm supposed to be doing towards the deadlines, for sure.
Do you struggle with procrastination?
Yeah, I do. Like workcrastination, right? Like I'll have something that I need to do, and I'll do something else that's productive but not really core instead. Like if you want a graph of the loss surface of logistic regression, turning the decision boundary in a 2D problem, like I made that for a lecture, but I don't think it was worth the time spent in it. But it counted as work when I was avoiding the thing I didn't want to do.
Yeah, exactly. You probably made it while distracting yourself from something else that needed to get done.
Yep. So that's the version that sort of I struggle with the most, because I think I can defend against the, just go watch TV or something, because that's clearly something I can cast in a bad light. But technically it's still working, is sort of the voice in my head.
Do you struggle with procrastination?
This ebbs and flows. I would say if there's a task that I'm not into, where it feels kind of like a waste of time, unnamed, I will definitely procrastinate. See, just to give like totally uncorrelated example, let's say writing a grant report. I may or may not have broken the world record of being late at grant reports. And so I apologize to the amazing folks who have to suffer through, say, being the program manager for one of the grants I've had. I think the team that I've worked with has done great work, and I don't know why I have this like blocker of making the 2-hour block to write that down as a report and hit submit on the website. So for something like that, pretty big procrastinator, probably a world-class procrastinator. But For other things, I think I'm pretty disciplined, and so it depends on the topic.
Do you struggle with procrastination?
Well, I wouldn't say I'd struggle with it. I'd say we're good friends. So I don't think of, I'm deadline driven. One of my favorite things to say, I say it to my students, and I say it to my kids even, there's nothing wrong with waiting until the last minute. The secret is knowing when the last minute is, right? So for me, I procrastinate. I try to procrastinate in ways that I actually end up accomplishing something else that I was putting off otherwise. So, my house gets very clean, and I'm trying not to write something that I'm supposed to be writing. And I get a lot of writing done when I don't want to clean my house, right? So I kind of hope it sort of balances and works out. So I don't think of it as a struggle. I just think of it as a way of life. And yes, I am a last minute kind of person, and I will put off things that I absolutely do not want to do until I absolutely need to do them. But I still try to get them done.
Do you struggle with procrastination?
Oh, yeah. Apparently there's some reason behind that. Like I noticed that especially if I try to do something well, it's even less likely that I will really get started. So I found that once I get started, it's easier to keep going. But sometimes I have this imagery of the perfect article that I want to write that I will never get started because it's daunting. And somehow I feel like I don't have enough good idea yet. I have to keep thinking.
Yeah. I know what you mean, where the picture in your mind is so good that there's no way you can get started towards it.
It's overwhelming because I'm gonna disappoint myself.